IVM.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawala, your peak performance coach, life coach, emotional intelligence practitioner, and NLP practitioner. I'm also the founder of Abzo Expertise Unique, and my organization constantly aims at building leaders across continents. After having worked with so many dynamic business honchos, entrepreneurs, startups, CEOs, management gurus, parents, and student communities worldwide, I am convinced that every individual has unleashed potential. And all we really need to do is realize it. Watch the magic unfold, enhance quality of life, relationships, and professions. On my show, be ready for some riveting conversations with inspirational people, snippets, stories, and much more. So here I am on this exceptional journey to find empowerment and inspiration anywhere I can. Come join me on this breathtaking path of self-realization, potential maximization, positivity, and most of all, embrace your inner power. You are on your way to empowering yourselves. Welcome to the Empowering Series with Zarina Poonawala. On today's episode, I'm in conversation with a prudent, perceptive, and passionate entrepreneur. Please welcome Neeraj Ranjan Raut, co-founder and CEO of Hiver. Hello, Neeraj. How are you today?
I'm good, Zarina. How are you?
I am good, thank you. Thank you for being on the show and making time for us. Really glad to have you today. So, how are you holding up, and how have the past few months been treating you?
So I think, we are all settling down into what the scenario is right now. But I
Right.
think as we are settling down, we are also asking questions about whether we can do this long term, right? So operationally, right? I mean, as a company, I think we are managing to achieve, functionally what we intend to achieve. But going remote suddenly has come as a shock to the system. So we are also asking a lot of questions about whether, culturally, this kind of way of working is going to be a good fit for us in the long run, right? So I think we have a lot of open questions as to exactly how this is going to pan out, and can we, keep doing this for a very, very long period of time.
That's right. That's absolutely true. But Neeraj, in terms of, the entire change and this enforced pause that we've all had in our lives, how has that made you feel? And, how did you kind of pick yourself up and make sure that everything's working out as it should?
So I think, one thing that, personally I've had in my favor is that I have an outstanding team at work
Mm-hmm.
and a very, very understanding family, right? So because I've been an entrepreneur for very, very long, and I've kind of settled down into this way of doing things, and faced multiple crises in the past, right?
Right.
And I think I have an outstanding team here. I mean, every person that I work with has been very understanding and accommodative, and I think we have all worked together to make this work. So beyond the shock of the month of April,
Mm-hmm.
where we had a lot of questions about, whether we can even work for a month like this, I think we have settled down very, very well into it, and yeah, people are holding up pretty nicely now.
That's quite nice. It's very positive to hear because you do listen to a lot of stories, and especially with businesses and entrepreneurs really going through this turmoil of what's next for their business. So it's really nice to hear that you've been holding up well, and your team is so supportive. You're
Yeah.
supportive of your team. Either way, it's just working out. So, Neeraj, it would be lovely to know more about your journey. How did you land up? I know you are an alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, and you've done your BTech. So I've done a little research, but it would be lovely to tell our listeners about your story and how did you embark upon this journey?
Absolutely. So, I grew up in a very small town in the, in the state of Jharkhand.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting fact, I thought that no one knows about it, but people do, because Netflix has a very popular series by the name of that town, and it's called Jamtara.
Mm-hmm. I watched
If
it.
you
I
go
watched
to,
it. This one,
I
yeah.
actually grew up in that town.
Oh, really? Okay.
So yeah, so really God forsaken small town that everyone knows about now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty interesting. So I did my schooling there. I went to St. Xavier's College in Kolkata for my plus two, which is my 11th and 12th.
Right.
And then I ended up going to IIT Kharagpur and did my BTech in electronics, right? And I don't think I planned on becoming, or getting into a business of any kind when I was doing my engineering. There was a lot of stuff to keep me busy, and I think I was just busy learning and experiencing a lot of stuff. But I think that after I got out of IIT, I spent 5 years, 5 to 6 years working at a really excellent engineering and R&D focused company called Mentor Graphics in Noida, and really outstanding team, very smart people, right? Solving really hard tech problems. And I think somewhere, there I thought that it's really fun, solving these tech problems, but probably, my skill set and what I can do, spans a range larger than just solving technical problems, right? So, I wanted to really explore my creative side of things because I've always been very creative, getting into art and painting and stuff, right? So I wanted to get into something where I could, kind of work on more facets of my personality than just my engineering skills, right? So I think that is what led me into starting a business in the beginning, right? It was not the desire to build a very successful large company or to lead people. It was just to find something to do which was more enriching than just being an engineer, right? So that is how it started. I started my first business with a batchmate of mine from IIT, a very, very good friend of mine. And yeah, I think we really early days for entrepreneurship in India in 2007, right after I got married, actually. And interesting story. My co-founder Munish left his job 3 days after he got married, right? So, and I left it probably a year after we got married. I mean, it was pretty interesting. And we were really excited. Very good team. We wanted to build, a product. We could not do it, and we ended up building this really lucrative business, which was building apps for customers in the US, right? So we ended up building a 20-25 people team in Noida, really profitable, doing good revenues and, paying us good salaries, etc., right? And we did that for 3.5 years. And Nitesh, who is my co-founder now, happened to be the first employee in that company. He joined us right out of college. He left. He's also from IIT Kharagpur. He did his computer science BTech in 2007, and he was part of the core team, almost a co-founder there. And both of us were extremely restless. We did not want to continue doing this services business. We wanted to build something original and innovative, right? So we ended up leaving that business, kind of just leaving it in 2011 and starting what is now Hyver, right? So that's kind of the background. And then I think we left, and I had already built a really decent network at that point of time. So I had Vijay Shekhar Sharma of Paytm, put in some money, and I pulled in some money from some more people, and we had a small seed round of around 1 crore, and we started the company with that, right? And then I think it grew from there. 2011, we started the company with a small bit of money, and then we did not raise any money, right? So we continued bootstrapping the company for the next few years till 2018 or so, grew it up to a decent amount of revenue, and then we ended up raising around $3.5 million, around $4 million from Kalari and K Capital in 2018, which is around 30 crores, a decent sum of money, right? And then we are growing it from there, right? So we are an 80 people company now, almost completely based in Bangalore, but with customers all over the world, right? So some of the best brands like Netflix, Airbnb are our customers. So yeah, so that's kind of the long answer to how the journey has been for me.
That is quite a comprehensive answer. And honestly speaking, I think it's amazing to know that somebody who's come from a small town, and and now that we are all aware of your town, thanks to Netflix, it's lovely to know that somebody has such passion, is so driven, and it gives you hope to believe that these things can happen where you actually come out of somewhere and you decide to make something with yourself and you do it. And of course that doesn't happen overnight. I'm sure it's a process, and it's also interesting. I kind of picked up a couple of two or three highlighted points from what you mentioned. One has to be your job and marriage and the coincidence there. um,
Yeah.
for sure. And of course, having your partner, your co-founder now, who was your first employee then, I think that also goes to show that you're somebody as a leader who likes people growing with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think, we have a few people in the company who has been with us for 6 or 7 years,
Hmm.
so yeah, I think, and, most of the people that we have had continue to be very, very good friends. So I think in this journey, both me and my co-founders have also ended up building some of the best relationships of our lives, which is, amazing.
Fantastic, fantastic. Also, the augmentation of the company from where you started seeding and how it actually, went on further, and how you've gotten here with your 80 employees, I think you mentioned. So,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. I'm quite enjoying this conversation already, Neeraj. Please tell us about the idea of Hiver and, the challenges that have come with it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, there are lots of challenges in terms of. So I'll take a few steps back and talk about the entire journey, right? So when we started in 2011, right? I mean, we are really passionate about email, right? I mean, email is something that I mean, you'll question how can someone be passionate about email, right?
Right.
It's like being passionate about a stone or a tree, right? But we being geeks, we are passionate about email, and that happens too. And I was personally a huge email user in all my previous jobs and stints. And I always felt that email is a huge part of how work gets done, but it's fundamentally broken. So small things like if I get an email and I want a colleague to take care of that email, I have to forward that email to that person, right? That's broken because I have 20 emails and I have 25 colleagues. All hell is going to break loose by the end of the day. And that actually, all hell actually happens to break loose in lots of workplaces just because of email, right?
So,
So
yeah.
now I think this is a description that, most people tend to relate to, and having to forward emails to be on top of them and, asking someone else, what happened with that email, etc., etc., is a part of everyone's day job. And we felt that's a huge problem. And we started from there, right? I mean, we wanted to make email better.
Right.
And we started from there in 2011. And then, with no experience, we built something. We got some customers. We built another version of it in 2013 or 14. We got some more customers. And then we built the version of the product that you see now in 2017, which is, if you go to hiveresq.com, what you see, right? So I think this was the third iteration of our product. And I think we hit it, right with the third iteration. I think so. We went on going for probably 5 years or so before we hit the right product. But then, I think those 5 years were also a lot of fun because, we are a small team, just 4 to 5 people. And with whatever we had built, we managed to sell it to some people. So we are always making a decent sum of money. So it was a period of happy, contented existence where we had something and we did not have something very big and we were making some strides towards it, but we are also happy at the same time with where we are, right? So I think that's how we managed to sustain for a long period of time.
That's brilliant. And what about the challenges that come with all of this? I'm pretty sure there have been plenty.
Absolutely, lots.
Or a
So then
few.
I think so. The challenges were primarily, customers always understood what we were trying to do, right?
Hmm.
We always understood what we were trying to do, right? But anyone who was not a customer or a maker did not understand what we were trying to do, right? So everyone asked a question that, why do you want to build a tool around email when you have WhatsApp, you have Slack, you have tons of other tools, right? So that was a huge thing. So if you look at the technology press around 2013 or 14, a lot of people were writing obituaries for email saying that email is going to die and
Yeah.
there's no future for email, etc., etc., right? But guess what? Email has been more stronger than ever it was right now, right? So I think dealing with that perception of email is going to die was a big thing for us, right? And it hit us in multiple places, right? So it was difficult to get press to write about us. It was difficult to raise money.
Hmm.
And so we did not bootstrap the company for so long completely out of choice, right? It was also extremely hard to raise money because we are trying to do an email based company in India where there are not too many SaaS investors
Right.
and with email being a hard space, right? So yeah, there were a lot of challenges mainly associated to the area of problem that we wanted to solve.
Right. So you've managed to overcome these challenges, how, if I may?
So I think, a lot of them have been, solved, by persistence, So I think the fact that we stuck around and we did not say in 2014 that, enough is enough, I'm leaving, right?
Hmm.
So I think just being confident that, this is a problem worth solving and it's fine not having resources. If you are just three engineers, two founders and two engineers, we'll continue to build what we want to build and let it take 3 years. We'll put in 3 years and we'll build it, right? So I think
Right.
it was primarily persistence and being really passionate about the problem that we are solving, which helped us, get through this.
Okay. So in that case, I am happy that I have introduced you well and I used the word passionate and perceptive in your introduction today because it seems like you're absolutely both of them. You've been building something in a time where, let's assume, and like you rightly mentioned, people have dissed or dismissed emails completely at a certain point. And how does it feel to actually convince people to do something or believe in something that they don't believe in? how does it feel to be able to propose that or persuade them? Because of course the persistence is there, but it is difficult when people are thinking about pumping money in and incubating and seeding and things like that. So, what is your one, maybe not a secret, but what is that one technique that you possibly use?
So the harder problem, I'll tell you, is not convincing others, right? The harder problem is actually keeping yourself convinced. So,
Right,
so
that's beautifully put. That's so true.
I think you can manage people, right? You can manage people's perceptions, and you can go back home and say that that guy is stupid, he does not get what I'm trying to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do you stop yourself from feeling that I am stupid and I should not be doing this, right? So I think the latter to me is a much larger problem, right? Self-doubt is a larger problem
Yes.
than not being convinced about other people's positions. And I think what probably we did right was that we managed that self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that we did not have self-doubt, right? I mean, I think we thought for 100 times that this is probably not the right approach. We even now we have doubts about whether we should do this or that, right?
Sure.
But I think sticking to your guns even when you have self-doubt and making those small tweaks in your positioning, small tactful things so that you can come across correctly to a person that you're pitching, right? I think they are very important, right? Because you cannot really change, what you are at the core and what you're positioning at the core. But if you make some tactful compromises of using the terms that the other guy understands, for example, right?
Right.
Planting ideas about other companies that have been successful, for example, right? So if you can make some of those tactful moves, you can also come across positively to the most skeptical person. You'll probably not win, but if you keep at it for a fairly long period of time, you'll get there.
Right. So then it's basically overcoming the self doubt with your persistence in that sense. And I think you
Absolutely,
rightly kind of blended the both of them. What is it
absolutely.
that interests you most in this field, and how do you keep yourself motivated, Neeraj?
So I think, if you ask different founders, they'll give very different answers to this, right? And we have also, me and Nitesh, my co-founder, get asked this question multiple times within our company too. That,
Mhm.
I mean, what keeps both of you going, right? And so I think, both of us were extremely driven by wanting to build something that is innovative and new, something that did not exist till now and exists now, which means that had I not built it, it would not have existed, right? So I think that gives us meaning that we kind of build it into existence, and without us it would not have been there. So I think building an innovative product that solves an interesting problem for a large number of people, I think that is what keeps us going, right? And a lot of things actually branch off from there, because if you're trying to do that, you'll need smart people, you'll need to keep people for long with you, you'll need people to trust you, and there are lots of offshoots of that single statement. But I think at the core, we have wanted to always build an innovative, interesting product for a large number of people. And that is, I think, what has kept us going.
That's quite interesting. That's, in fact, it makes a lot of sense because innovation is something that is supposed to be reached far and wide, and it is at this point in
Yeah.
time. So I'm guessing that makes the whole concept so much more diligent and, totally worth it in that sense. What is it that you think, Neeraj, the current scenario is going to pose to the industry? Because, the pandemic has probably, like we spoke about it in the beginning, there have been those moments of self doubt even then, I'm guessing. And more
Yeah.
importantly, I think everybody has gone through this phase of not knowing what's next and how do we
Yeah.
go about with this entire shift, when it comes to work, when it comes to your style of work, and so to say, the new normal, what people are calling it these days. So,
Yeah.
what is your take on the current scenario in the industry, and how is Hiver kind of coping with this?
So, I mean, there are, of course, macroeconomic trends which are problematic, right? For
Mm-hmm.
example, multiple countries are going into recession, and entire, industries or verticals are dying. For example, I mean, aviation, I'm sure you're reading, right? I mean,
Yes.
Boeing and Airbus are having their, orders cancelled, etc., right? So it's extremely discomforting and problematic from a macro perspective. And if you are a business that caters to one of the segments that have been that have been hit badly, right? I mean, had you been a company that builds aviation parts, for example, right? I mean, you'd be very, very badly hit. But the good thing, I mean, I should probably not call it the good thing, but I would say the lucky thing here for a company like ours is the fact that we are extremely horizontal in who we serve, and we are extremely diversified. So if you look at our customer base, you'll find probably every vertical under the earth. So you'll find logistics, you'll find financial services, you'll find travel, IT services, you'll find, blogging, home cooks, pretty much every kind of vertical that you can think of, right?
Right.
So, the outcome of such, diversification is that, you are really cushioned from a lot of, bad things that might be hitting one particular segment,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I think, we have managed to kind of take the shock because we are extremely, diversified and cushioned against a lot of stuff that is happening. So, and the second super trend, kind of mega trend, which is helping a lot of SaaS companies is that, people are going remote, right?
Mhm.
I doubt any company has directly benefited in a significant manner from it, but it has definitely given a lot of hope and a lot of pipeline to companies like us to close business over the next, year or so, right?
Right.
So I would say that, for SaaS and for a lot of different kind of SaaS which are, kind of diversified across industries, they would continue to do well. Mega trends are bad, of course. I mean, macroeconomically, there would be a hit. But, there is one thing that is different about this recession compared to other recessions, and we know that how it's going to be solved, right?
Right. Sure.
And we have a rough timeline of when it is going to be solved, right? So that is why, you are seeing the large tech companies still post large earnings, for example. People are still buying iPhones, right?
Oh, yes, they are.
Because, yeah, so because they know they can use the camera after 6 months, right? So to sum up, right, I mean, that was a long answer, but to sum up, right, if you are a diversified SaaS player like us, you are cushioned to a very, very large extent.
Mhm.
If you are verticalized into a segment that is badly hit, you would have to wait it out and survive for the next 6 months or so.
Hmm.
There is no real option that you have. You have to pool in whatever resources you have and survive for the next 6 to 12 months. And I think then you can start, getting back into the game.
Certainly, that completely makes sense. Now, I
Yeah,
was wondering, you have a close-knit leadership process, which I am kind of gauging from this conversation also. And
yeah,
there is these employees, and you have constantly had to make sure that everybody is doing their job at the same time dealing with the kind of challenge the pandemic has posed in recent times. How has
yeah.
your relationship with your employees changed? Has it changed, in fact, if I may start with that?
Of course, I mean, it has definitely changed. We had a extremely friendly, informal relationship, right? So, I mean, for example, the leadership team that I work with, right? I mean,
Mhm.
mostly are VPs and, heads of different functions, right? I mean, they are more like friends to me than they are to, coworkers, right? And of course, I mean, that has been hit in the recent times, right? And when you have that kind of a friendly relationship with people, right? A lot of difficult things become easy. It's easier to give critical feedback, for example. It's easier to set targets, for example, right? And with everything having become, so my biggest grouse against this way of working is that everything is too formal and structured. There
Yes.
is no space for serendipitous things for happen. There is no space for accidental encounters with people where you can share a chat and
Hmm.
discuss something, right? And the loss of that, a lot of people think that's efficiency, right? But I don't think that's efficiency, right? I mean, a lot of humanness has gone away from how we work,
Right. The lack of
and
human
the lack of
connection.
that
Yeah.
has been a huge problem. From my perspective, I think that is a significant problem, and I think we are getting by. One thing is that everyone I was working with has been in the company for more than 18 months or so, right? So we can take this hit of 6 months of lack of connection.
Hmm. The human connection bit has taken, I think, the worst hit, to be honest with you. And
Absolutely.
you're so right that it doesn't always add efficiency or productivity to your performance.
Yeah,
This is something
absolutely.
that a lot of entrepreneurs don't pay attention to. I mean, a lot of people I'm speaking with in general, through the coaching purview of things, will tell me that this is great because everybody is doing their work, everything is getting done, and there is no need for any further conversation. And then that is exactly what I'm telling them, what you've just told me. So I'm so glad. It's good to know that an entrepreneur is thinking deeper than just getting the numbers and having work done, because the tangibility these days is important, right? Because any which way, to be
Absolutely.
honest with you, everything is so digital or technical. You're sitting in the same room and you're possibly on phones and laptops, so even that little bit of sitting together has stopped now. So I'm so
Absolutely.
glad you actually picked on that.
Absolutely.
So is there anything, Neeraj, that you're doing to make sure that there is that extra effort that the organization is taking to keep the
So
connection going?
So, it's personally very hard for me because, I am, an introvert of the worst kind. I cannot do this, right?
Right,
So it's
right.
very, very difficult for me, right? And I've stopped fighting it. I've realized now, at my age that I'm an introvert, I cannot solve it. So I'm really banking on other people to solve it, right? So I'm banking on our HR to solve it, for example, and I think they're getting there. But
That's
we are also at the same time counting on this being over very soon.
hmm hmm right. Now, this is really interesting. I'm just very happy about the point you shared because the human connection bit is something that most people have started missing. In fact, so many people want to actually not work from home anymore, and they actually want to go back to their workspaces. So it's a good thing because I
Absolutely.
think it also makes you realize that there are a lot of things we take for granted when it comes to your work and
Yeah,
bosses and the whole experience that they give you. So
absolutely.
glad that you're thinking like that and you're getting people to do something differently. With the employees, how are you doing things differently now, Neeraj? Anything that's changed drastically? Of course, these are the concerns, the human connection, tangibility, but what is different and what does it look like going forward?
So, I mean, one kind of problem that I see with whatever we are trying to do is we are trying to, kind of come up with lower quality variations of online interactions into or offline real world interactions into online. And what I mean by that is that we are trying to replace what a face-to-face meeting would have looked like
Okay.
on Zoom, for example, right? So one example is that why don't we all grab a bottle of beer and sit down in front of our laptops at 5 o'clock on Friday, right? That's really that's I mean that's dumb and that's a very bad that's a really poor man's version of what it does look like in the real world, and you are going to constantly miss that real world interaction when you're doing this, right? So I think a lot of stuff that we too and a lot of other companies are doing are poor man's versions of real interactions. And what we are trying to do is trying to figure out things that are only possible online, which should not have happened offline, right?
Right.
And I think when we start doing those things is when it starts to get fun, right? So I think our HR has come up with a lot of stuff for that kind, where we can have the entire company participate on a Slack channel, right? So I think we are running meme competitions, for example, which have been extremely fun, and where people make memes about each other,
Memes
and
are I they are the most entertaining things. I'm so happy.
absolutely.
You know what? I think I should reconsider what I'm doing and probably want to join your company now.
So it has been a lot of fun, right? I mean, memes have been excellent, right? And we have had people taking pot shots at others
Mhm.
without anyone feeling bad about it, right? So which
Yes.
has been excellent, right? So I think yeah. So the key thing to get it right is to find things which make sense online and which could not have been done in the real world, right? And then if you can hit upon a set of such things, they'll start to make sense.
But that is great. That is actually quite interesting because maybe what's missing is with this human connection, I think the sense of humor and laughter and
Yeah,
being able to take a joke or pick a joke is probably
absolutely.
missing. So I'm
I
thinking
think that is.
you are making a good progress in that direction as well, Neeraj. Kudos to
Yeah,
you. And
thank you.
yeah, I mean, I'd like to be on the meme list if there is any because it's always nice
We'll
to
invite you.
that makes you laugh through the day. So that is something that you've been doing with, let's say, the employees, and there is this whole relationship and interpersonal skills and a lot of effort in that direction. So between founders, Neeraj, what do you see and how do co-founders generally work well under these conditions? Because naturally it's not very common and unprecedented times, as we all know. But
Yeah.
a lot of companies are hit also because founders, co-founders have not been able to match their views and their vision for the company then. So how do you think that works?
So
What
I think we have been fortunate in that regard because we have known each other for a very very long period of time, right? And I think we can almost predict each other's responses now. So if someone comes to me saying, "Should I ask Nitesh about it?" I tell him, "You can ask, but I'll tell you what he's going to say." Right? So, and I'm sure Nitesh also does this. I mean, he would say that this is what Nitesh is going to say.
right.
So I think I think we have been extremely fortunate in that regard because we have worked together for a very very long period of time. But I mean, how to do founder relationships right is extremely tricky, right? The only way to do it right is to have mutual respect.
Oh, yes.
and for you to know that you are going to disagree, right? And if you think that you are never disagreeing, that is probably the first indicator to a problem. So, any two good co-founders are going to disagree most of the time. And rest assured, sometimes the decision that you take by, kind of ruling over your co-founder is going to be wrong. And you have to realize 1 year down the line that I've made a wrong decision and make amends, right? So I think, the only way to get it right is to respect each other and realize when you took a wrong decision and then, make amends, right? So I think there is no other magic formula to getting it to work. It's extremely difficult and tricky.
Hmm. I agree. I completely second what you're saying. That's wonderfully put. Okay. There is this one aspect we've covered about co-founders, which I just thought is interesting because, there are a lot of listeners out there, startups, entrepreneurs, friends getting together, let's say people who know each other, relatives getting together and starting a business. Do you sometimes have to know the degree of personal and professional space that you need to keep in mind, or is it all mixed?
It's all mixed. I can try to give you a smart answer, but that will not be true.
No, I'm glad I stand it. I don't want smart. I want true. So it's good.
Right.
But when you say mixed, it can that be a little bit challenging sometimes because then you don't know where to, which kind of relationship is speaking with you, or does it make things easier?
No, so I mean, the first few things that you have to realize with a co-founder is that you are going to have conflicts, right?
Right.
Once you get past that point that you are going to have conflicts and you are going to have disagreements and sometimes they are going to get difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is kind of a rule of nature, and there is no way getting around it, right?
Agree.
And if you are going to have disagreements, it's better if you know the other person very, very well,
Mm-hmm.
even on a personal count, because that works as a cushion in the scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and that gives you another way to connect with that person even beyond your immediate disagreement or your immediate problem, right?
Right.
And to me, this intermingling of what is professional and what is personal is actually a good thing. And if that can happen, that will only help you, right? But with relatives and all, you also mentioned relatives, right? It can get
Yes.
very, very
Yes.
complicated,
Yes. That's
right? It can
complicated.
get it
Mm-hmm.
can get very, very complicated, and I don't ever recommend starting a company with relatives.
Yeah, I believe so. But the newer generation seems to be slightly more comfortable, and I think they seem to know how to differentiate and keep some things away from the family and so on. Earlier maybe everybody got involved into everything. Now,
Yeah,
with the millennials and the newer generation taking, reins of business earlier in their lives, I think their approach is slightly different. So it might work, but then again, I agree with you. Working in such sensitive spaces can be very difficult in the long run.
absolutely. No, see, there are anomalies and there are exceptions to every rule, right? I mean, what I mentioned was a very, very general rule, right?
Right.
But there is nothing general about startups and businesses. There are anomalies by definition, right? So,
So,
so I mean, it's completely possible for someone to be able to work out.
mhm.
And I mentioned, right, the newer generation, right? I mean, there are two things about them. They are much more independent than what we were like, and they are much more outspoken, right?
Yeah.
And when you combine those two things, they can make anything work. So.
Yes, yes. It's also as the smart work generation, their entire belief system is quite different. And I mean, I'm adapting to it. It's working, but it's taking time. But they know how to get through.
Do you think they have a belief system?
They do. It's just a little different from us. I have realized, to be honest, I work with a lot of these startups, and I've realized that they know how to find an easy way of doing something just because of the impatience they have. And sometimes that's great, sometimes that doesn't work. And they need to find things a certain way. But yes, belief system, thoda to mujhe lagta hai.
I'm sure. I'm just joking. So,
Yeah. Okay.
so I have one question that, I mean, that, that is something that I kind of struggle with, not struggle, but, this is a constant process, right? So what I've learned is that, when you build a company with multiple different functions, you basically bring together people with different inclinations and personalities, right? So what is a good characteristic for a sales guy might not be a good characteristic for an engineer, right? So they tend to be very different people is something that I'm realizing, right? So you have two problems here, right? So you need all of these people to be able to work together and collaborate together. And then for me to be, satisfied with the entire work environment, I also want these people to be able to respect each other, right?
Yeah.
And that is usually a tough problem from what I've seen, right? So they might be able to collaborate somehow to get to some degree of, working together, but to generate genuine respect for each other is usually hard.
Hmm.
And that is where I think I'll ask you a question, right? I mean, is that even worth aiming for, first of all? And if that is worth aiming for, I mean, how should I get there?
Of course, it's worth it. And I think the important aspect is one, I think the important thing is to make sure that the vision or the entire idea of the company is ownership and the accountability that comes with it. So, once, no matter how different their profiling is and how different the entire departmentalization is, it is important to know that everybody is working towards one common goal. You know, the second thing is, in my opinion, what really happens in organizations in general is the fact that the respect doesn't come because there is some amount of competitiveness and comparison. So it
Yeah,
just, so to say, if I may, let's assume that there is a data analyst or that kind of a sector, or there's the sales, or there's an HR team, and there's, finance. There is always sometimes a situation where the founder or the boss is more inclined to having conversations with one aspect and
yeah,
neglecting the other, and that kind of causes a rift sometimes. So an important thing is, I'm sure it's, I'm not speaking about you, I'm just generalizing this to the level where that feeling of being wanted, just because you're not doing something else, are you still wanted, or is your job just behind the scenes? So when you're behind the scenes, people don't realize the effort sometimes, or they're not having too much interaction with you. That can lead to insecurity and comparison, and then self doubt, like you mentioned earlier. So I guess the whole idea of not being able to respect each other comes from that insecurity and self doubt. And as an organization, it's wonderful when there's a common goal which is constantly affirmed to the organization, to everybody. And maybe, this is one thing I truly believe in general, Neeraj, that with teams, you applaud an individual in public and criticize behind closed doors. So once there are certain people who know that they're probably, lesser achievers than the others, they already feel smaller. So those are the people who require the extra boost. Once you can possibly do that, the respect level comes in because they feel like they're, on par with the others. That makes a huge difference. So I think it's a common goal,
yeah.
accountability, and all of that.
I think that makes sense. I think I could also relate to some of what you said. So yeah, that was spot on.
Yes, yes. So I'm glad. I'm glad it makes sense because you're quite an astute person yourself. So if this makes sense to you, then it definitely has some sense in it.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
we've come towards the end, and the last segment of our conversation. This time has gone by very quickly. To be honest with you, I think
Yeah.
it's one of the fastest conversations I've had. Not in terms of the number of minutes, but just in this sense of flow of the conversation. So I wanted to ask you, Neeraj, what are your words of wisdom that you'd like to share with employers and employees at this point in time?
So I mean, you're talking about primarily the COVID scenario, right?
However you like it, in general, COVID. I mean, of course, COVID is,
So in the COVID scenario, I would I would really say that both the parties need to understand the constraints that the other parties is operating under, right?
Mhm, mhm,
So I mean the companies need to understand that the employees are feeling insecure, they are in a new kind of work environment, right?
mhm.
And they are having to adopt to a completely new way of doing things, right? So that's number one. Employees also need to understand that companies are extremely stressed in terms of new customer acquisition, for example, retaining customers, raising money, etc., right? So
That-
it's a difficult time for everyone, and I think everyone would be better served if each of them understood the other person's perspective.
that's so true.
So I think that's very, very important, right? Because companies are going through an immense amount of stress right now. I have friends who had to make really take really drastic steps, really painful, ugly steps to keep their companies afloat.
Hmm.
So these are extremely difficult times, and I hope that both parties understood what the other guy is going through.
I agree completely. I hope people take some wisdom from that and actually try and understand both situations. I think it's a little bit of empathy that you're talking about there, just being empathetic towards both, the
Yeah, so
understanding of.
it's possible to be empathetic to a person, but it's not. It's very difficult to be empathetic to a company which is
Yes,
actually not a human entity, right?
yes,
But you have to think of that, and I think it's also up to the founders and entrepreneurs to make sure that people understand what the company is going through. Because if you don't spell it out in a way that resonates with your employees, people will never get that.
certainly, certainly. And that brings me to the last and signature question of my show. obviously we can't let you go without you answering this one. Neeraj, what empowers you the most?
So again, as I said, right, I mean, it really tends to vary. I mean, I'm sure you have talked to hundreds of founders and it
Mhm.
varies widely and probably my answer is going to look weird, right? And for me, I mean, and I think I can speak to some extent for my co-founder Ritesh too, right? I mean, I think we are both driven by building things
Right.
and figuring out how things work, right? So for example, for me, marketing is a problem of figuring out exactly how we can tweak a channel to get more customers and then building a structure around being able to do that month on month, right? So and then when you look at it things that way, then from that you have other things that come out, right? You need to build teams, you need to build processes, you need to raise money, etc., right? But I think we are most driven by being able to build something unique based on some unique thing that we have figured it out, right? It might not be unique for the entire world, but for me personally, it should be a moment of I understood something new which is going to lead to something interesting, right? So I think that has been what has driven me most in the last whatever number of years.
Fantastic. I think that's quite empowering. And in fact, this whole conversation has been quite empowering. I'm pretty sure there's lots to take away from this. And I really, really thank you for just having such an energizing and stimulating conversation and being so active in the conversation, making it sound so interesting. I'm sure that everybody's going to love listening to you, Neeraj. Thank you for your valuable time and all the lovely, invaluable lessons you've taught us.
Thank you, Zarina. It was great talking to you.
If you liked this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Intel, for coming back to us. We love our sponsors. If you'd like to be one of them, do reach out. So really, really cool week on the network this week, right? Started off with a bang. Abhijit Ganguly was on Cyrus Says. Funny comedian. I think you guys will enjoy that. We had Dimant Parekh on Advertising is Dead. Dimant's the founder of Better India. Govindraj Athiraj is also on Uncle Please Sit this week. That's a really fascinating show which they talk about fake news. On The Habit Coach, there was a crossover event with Aditi Surana from Absolutely Right. I think you definitely enjoyed that. And last but not least, definitely a show I'd love you all to check out. We have a new show called This Round Is On Me. It's hosted by Gauri Devi Dayal. If you remember, Gauri and I worked on a show together called The Kolaba Cartel a while ago. Fun show. If you haven't checked that out, do check that out. But this is a show where she's talking to a lot of different people in the food space. Her first guest is Harsh Mariwala, a legend in his own time. I think you'll really, really enjoy that show. But with that, we hope to see you again next week.
Do you have a night routine? Well, everyone has one. And the to-do list usually looks like this. Brush your teeth, set that alarm, get into your pajamas, and switch off those screens. But here's one more to add to that list. Tune into the Positively Unlimited podcast for a dose of positive action and tips on how to build powerful mindsets. Episodes out every Monday on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you tune into podcasts.